Hello and welcome to this tactical analysis of the Barcelona versus Wolfsburg game in the UEFA Women's Champions League. Been a little while. This will actually be my last video until the 25th of next month. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider sharing it on social media and subscribing. With that, let's jump into the analysis. So I'd like to focus on the tactics and then show a couple of scenarios. So I thought it'd be good to start off with Barcelona's deep build-up. So Barcelona had a number of shapes when they built up. Please have a look in the tactical summary below. I kind of try to break it down a little bit more there. The key spaces that Barcelona are looking to exploit are in behind the press of Wolfsburg. That's in that right-hand side channel as well as in the left-hand side channel. They're going to exploit that space by having one Hermoso drop from her number 9 or false 9 position into more of a centre midfield or centre attacking midfield position, dragging out Janssen too. So Wolfsburg really had like a 4-1-3-2 shape with regards to their press, but it was really player to player. So you would have the likes of Janssen track this player dropping, and then you'd end up with this back three, and you'd have Graham Hansen and Krinogrovic, forgive me for that, would come really narrow. So when they did have the ball at the back, Barcelona would be able to play it around, and they would typically try and get Guerrero or any of the other centre backs as well to get on the ball, and then they could launch balls in behind, whether it was for these runners centrally. So Hansen and Krinovic are quite quick relative to the defenders. Then you also had space for the likes of Bonmati, or if Bonmati dropped, drawing away pop, then you could have Pateas run into there. Obviously this is Barcelona, so there's a lot of fluidity here, but they were able to exploit these spaces created by the aggression of the Wolfsburg press. I'd also want to just highlight Rolfo's position as well. She wasn't staying deep with the rest of the defenders and was trying, as the ball was being built up at the back here, to try and get as high as she could, and eventually she would end up in more of like a left wing position. Okay, so next I want to just touch on Barcelona's in possession shape. I'd say generally it was this 3-1 and then like a 2-4. Again, there's a lot of fluidity. The numbers are purely to give an idea of what the shape looked like. You had Guerrero as that CDM, but again, you had a lot of fluidity. She could end up higher up the pitch, helping with a counter press on the occasions when Wolfsburg won the ball back, but also from her deeper position, due to just how much possession Barcelona had and how aggressively positioned Rolfo, Graham Hansen, and the rest of these centre forwards were. Wolfsburg were really compressed relatively deep in their half at times, so she could have quite a bit of space in this midfield to be able to pick out passes, whether it's short passes into her centre midfield partners or long raking passes into Rolfo, who tended to end up free because whether it was Huth or on occasion when Jones and Huth had swapped, trying to track her, they didn't want to drop early. They wanted to try and stay with the rest of this centre midfield. Eventually, in the second half, Wolfsburg go to more of like a 5-3-2 with Huth coming inside, and then I think at that point we have the likes of Bloomfist and Payot in, and they have a little bit of a reshuffle and play a 5-3-2 instead, but they have a player, I think at that point it's Westmouth who actually drops into this right wing back position. But anyway, they have like a 5-3-2 instead and just focus on counter-attacking rather than trying to keep this 4-4-2 shape. They just accept that Barcelona will have dominance and go with a 5-3-2 instead, and then that way you shut down the space for the likes of Rolfo and Graham Hansen, or they made a number of substitutions at this point later in the game where instead you had Ashwala on, you had Pina on, but they're still looking to try and do kind of the same thing and overload either the half spaces or be able to switch it out into Rolfo, who would have a lot of space, at least against this 4-4-2. You have Guerrero able to play those long balls or play it short, a lot of fluidity. You've got Hermoso dropping off again, kind of due to the aggression of the defenders for Wolfsburg. That did sometimes create spaces for the likes of Krinogrovic to be able to just run centrally. That was a serious threat, but also because of the movement of the likes of Hermoso, whether she's dropping into that right-hand side channel, whether she's dropping to the left-hand side channel, and the defenders tracking her, because midfields are a lot more reticent to go with. That meant that there were spaces for the forwards or deep lying runners to be able to exploit that space and get into a really advantageous position for Barcelona. Okay, so lastly, I wanted to quickly touch on Wolfsburg's tactical build-up. Okay, so we're focusing on their 4-1-2-3 shape. I think the key thing here really is the positioning of their defenders, and then also the amount of space that it creates out in these wide channels, so whether that's on that left hand side or on the right hand side. I say that because with the fullbacks being as deep as they were really starting deep for Wolfsburg here. What they're trying to do is kind of just create this huge space for the fullbacks of Barcelona to defend. Graham Hansen or Giraldez are looking to try and press towards those fullbacks, and that just means there's a ton of space in here for the wide midfielders of Wolfsburg to be able to work with. They were typically looking to stay on the shoulder of the last woman or last player, so they are looking for those balls in behind, but they can drop, and there's a lot of space in there for them to drop. Also, it meant that when the ball did go out into those wide spaces, yes, Barcelona were looking to try and compact the pitch. They would come across and try and press you towards the touchline, but it meant if, whether it was Pop or Ruud, were able to drop, or whoever the centre midfielders, because Wolfsburg did swap on occasion their centre midfielders to try and disrupt the Barcelona press. If the fullback could play the ball into one of these centre midfielders, they could then follow their pass into that space, and now you have just a ton of space for this fullback to be able to work with. Yes, they're going to be tracked, but if they do a good pass, they should be a metre or two ahead of that play potentially and be able to follow the play up the pitch. Where Wolfsburg didn't play these short balls, then you would get Schilt sometimes playing it long straight to Ruud. Again, Ruud could try and find space between the lines with the intention of being able to then, either hold it up and then try and play it into the rest of her forwards. But whilst she gave it a good go, I would say that overall Barcelona's domination of possession meant that we didn't really see too much successful build-up from Wolfsburg, other than maybe when Schilt avoided this press or this build-up hit completely by just throwing the ball out early or playing the ball long early. And so we see that on both counterattacks from Barcelona corners, where you'd have the likes of Stroot and maybe Huth later in the game as the focal points for those long balls, or whether it was Stroot and Wasmuth. And again, it's just a case of Schilt looking to try and play the ball as early as possible while there's potential disorganization in the back line, because Barcelona players are committed to the corner. Okay, with that, let's have a look at a few examples. Okay, so we're going to start off with Wolfsburg in position here. This being a pretty typical shape that they were looking to set up, with a 3 and then 1 centre midfielder here with Pop, and your far-sided here right back is looking to be more aggressive. Unlike Rausch, the left back, Widemar was looking to try and get up the pitch and potentially get into an attacking position and support Huth, but the dominance of Barcelona meant we didn't get to see too much of this. Again, as we mentioned, you've got your forwards looking to try and be on the shoulder, looking for that early ball, looking for that run in behind, and then you've got Latwine, your 2 centre midfielders, looking to try and support their forwards. There's a couple of things that I want to point out with this scenario. One being here with Rolfo's position, we have that 2 set up, so we've got a 2-3 here, but your far-sided fullback, your left back, specifically Rolfo, not Torrejan, is looking to try and get up from her fullback position all the way into a left wing position. And then also you're having the 2 centre forwards, but forwards for Barcelona coming a little bit narrow. So Krnogorovic is coming off that left hand side and basically playing as a centre forward, but I would almost also say that Graham Hansen is also playing as a centre forward. They're both looking to make this run inside, basically go 1v1 against a centre back preferably. Whilst we're talking about Barcelona, I think it's also good to just point out Hermosa's position as well. Her and also maybe Bonmati or Putellas are holding this kind of CAM position. From here they can make runs into these kind of vacated spaces due to the runs of these forwards by Barcelona, who have pulled these other defenders more narrow. I think it's important to just talk briefly about Wolfsburg's press. So here we've got a 3-1-4-2. So we've got here our back line, we've got one of our centre midfielders here in Pop, and then we actually have one of our centre backs, Janssen, here. As mentioned earlier during the video, the centre backs, but defenders in general for Wolfsburg, were trying to be quite aggressive. Here, Janssen has ended up in this position because she was looking to try and track Hermoso, but the pass from Panos into Bonmati here was poor. So it went to Janssen. Janssen's able to step off Hermoso and get this ball and then try and push Wolfsburg onto an attack. However, her pass is poor and she gives it straight back to Bonmati. But we see this a lot in this game, where you've got defenders for Wolfsburg looking to be on the front foot, looking to be aggressive with their press. Unfortunately, from there, Barcelona able to basically play around what little pressure Wolfsburg try and put higher up the pitch. and eventually Barcelona are able to spread the play. If the ball went out towards this touchline, or maybe towards the other touch, they want to try and press you towards the touchline. Use it as an extra defender, as the 12th player, because wide midfielders tend to not want to do their defensive duties, because that obviously takes away energy from their attacking side of the game, and also to a certain degree it kind of blunts the attacking side of their game by having them to make longer runs. Here we see Huth not wanting to track Rolfo's position, so inevitably you end up with Rolfo free and just a ton of space out here for Barcelona to exploit. This happened on numerous occasions. It was basically just a big part of the game, with Rolfo, yes, meant to be playing left back, but really her impact was from left wing. Narrow forwards, just as we mentioned, as well as also Hermoso deeper. So this is relatively similar to the other deep build-up by Barcelona that we mentioned. Again, we've got our two centre-backs really deep. Our right back is staying with the rest of the defenders, but our left back, Rolfo, is very high up the pitch, looking to try and get into a left wing position again. You're going to have Hermoso dropping off the line, whilst the other two forwards for Barcelona are relatively narrow. This is going to create a lot of space on this right hand side again, as we saw earlier, and we're seeing that 4-1-3-2, which can become almost a 3-2-3-2 depending on which of these Wolfsburg defenders is going to go into this space to try and help Latvine and Pop. Okay, so just as before, Janssen is the one to track Hermoso. This was one of the reasons why I thought that Wolfsburg were playing a player for player pressing style. You've got all of the players that are quite deep 1v1, your fullbacks and centre back. Literally everyone here is player for player. It's obviously very aggressive. It allows you to potentially put a lot of pressure high up the pitch. The problem is, if Barcelona play the ball long, there is just so much space to exploit. And of course, exploit that space is what Barcelona do, and we see the ball played into this space here. Again, just quick note on Hermoso's position, and then also with Putellas making that run from centre midfield to join that forward line, and the two centre forwards for Barcelona very narrow again, and Rolfo, your left back in the left wing position really. Again, here I wanted to show both the Barcelona press, a 4-4-2/4-1-3-2 with Guijarro or Wahabi, the CDM for Barcelona, dropping deeper or being a little bit more conservative. So you can see her here, the CDM looking to kind of, patrol this central space, whereas your other centre midfielder is pushing a little bit higher up, trying to prevent, in this case it's actually Payo, I believe, being able to drop freely and take the ball from Schultz. At this point, Wolfsburg were playing out of the back a lot more aggressively, although they didn't have very many occasions when they could, and when they did have the opportunity, Schultz did try and play the ball out as quickly as possible, typically with an early throw. But you see the aggression here in both the positions of the two fullbacks. Here, Wiedemar is literally, a wide midfielder at this point, and then you've kind of got the same shape that we had earlier in the game, with our forwards all looking to be on the shoulder of the last player. Eventually, Wolfsburg are able to get the ball up the pitch, going down a channel, which was their preference pretty much throughout the game. Again, except for when Schultz was able to throw the ball out early or was looking to set up counterattacks. And from there, they're looking to try and use their dynamism. Obviously, that's Wolfsburg's strength. Not that you really got to see it very often this game. And eventually, with the likes of Payo and Blomqvist as well as obviously Jonas Strateer, you have a lot of pace on the pitch. They just weren't able to use that dynamism as much as they wanted. But we're seeing a little bit of that here with Wasmuth looking to try and run Paredes. And here we've got Blomqvist looking to try and sneak in behind Rolfo. Okay, so my favourite example or scenario from this game, third player run by Barcelona. Okay, so we've got Mapi Leon. She's dribbled actually all the way from that left-hand side, and she comes inside, eventually playing the ball out to Torrejon. Wolfsburg aren't in a terrible position here. They've got their back four, and then their midfield is a little bit awry, I guess. You've got one of your centre midfielders here, and then your other midfielders are all here. At this point, they haven't quite dropped the two wide midfielders into that far side, at least, to becoming a wing back. So in this case, it would be Giraldez Stroot dropping to become right here. She doesn't need to necessarily, because Rolfo isn't super high up the pitch yet, but their shape isn't terrible. But then as the ball's played across to the right-hand side, Huth comes out and is beaten by Torrejan's fleet footwork. But still, I'd say that Wolfsburg isn't entirely awry. I wouldn't say that Barcelona are yet in a dominant position. However, this is your left back. The problem here for Wolfsburg is this space here. You've got an absolute chasm between your left back and your left centre back. That in and of itself is not yet an issue. It only becomes an issue if one of these Barcelona players is able to make a run into this space. And even if they do get into that space, they still should be tracked by someone. Again, Hermoso drop, and then Janssen track, and therefore we have a problem. Both your full back, your left back, and your left centre back have pushed high, and no one has dropped into that space, whether from centre midfield or the other centre back partner. No one filled that space. So it wasn't necessarily that the centre backs or defenders by themselves made a mistake. It was that no one covered for them when they were trying to fulfill their role as pressing and tracking Barcelona players who've dropped. Other than that, for Wolfsburg, we've kind of touched on the main points. I think it's maybe good to show 1-2 examples of a corner taken by Barcelona and then Schulte looking to play the ball early. As mentioned earlier in the video, it's either Giraldez Stroot or in this case Wasmuth as well, maybe even Huth as these focal points for the counter-attack, and then they're typically supported by quite a few runners. But then also I thought it'd be nice to just touch a little bit on Giraldez Stroot's quite remarkable throw-in actually. So we only got to see it in the 87th minute. Remarkable due to just how much distance she got on it. And however, we only saw it once in the game. And you might ask, but why? Why didn't they use it more? Barcelona just dominate possession. You never had the opportunity